Welcome to Who Wrote That Up For You, a daily podcast that shines a light on the American justice system and its role in empowering the powerful to take from you. The justice system is the only branch of your government where an individual, rather than the collective, can make the system act for you. It puts power in the individual's hands, but it's broken and being used against you at a time when you need it most.
And welcome to Who Wrote That Up For You. I am Sonia Ebron, a co-founder at Courtroom 5.
And I am Deborah Sloan, the other co-founder at Courtroom 5.
Delightful show lined up for you today. In a few moments, we will speak with Mathew Kerbis. He's a lawyer in Illinois and the founder of Subscription Attorney. We're going to talk with him about the billable hour and some access to justice issues and just the innovations in the legal space that folks like him are dealing with and bringing to the market. So very excited to chat with him. Before we get there, Deborah, what is on your mind today?
All right. I'm really looking forward to the discussion with Mathew. I want to talk a little bit about the Arizona and Utah decision to allow non-lawyer advocates to provide free limited scope services and representation for primarily for people who are facing housing, they call it housing instability. And so it's a pilot program in both states simultaneously. They're going to train and license volunteers or staff members at nonprofit groups. And eventually, it's going to allow them to evaluate the effectiveness of each program. Two different states with different housing laws and with different challenges. But what's really great is what the advocates can do. They can provide general legal advice about their rights as basically as tenants. Dispute resolution strategies in regard to that, work out some payment plans. They can advise clients on the eviction process, and they can advocate in court in Arizona at least. They can sit next to the people they represent or the people that they're helping. Let me put it that way, that they're advocating for. They can sit during court hearings at the table with them and respond to the questions from the judge or give them help during the proceeding. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the outcome of these two programs.
I think it's fantastic. And I really, shout out to Utah, which really spearheaded this movement, and to Arizona. I think they are really leading the way, and I'm hoping that the rest of the states follow their lead. I know there's a lot of attention to what they're doing in the legal space. I think the important thing they've recognized is that the vast majority of Americans get no legal help at all, right? When they are faced with these situations. And, some help is better than no help, right?
Right.
Sure, everybody needs a lawyer. Everybody wants a lawyer, but that's just not happening. And so again, I think, just really shout out to them for recognizing that there is some help available. Mm-hmm. It is not white shoe legal that lawyers went to school to learn how to provide, but that model for most folks is unaffordable. That's why I'm really interested to speak with Mathew here in a moment. But yeah, fantastic. Shout out again to Arizona and to Utah for these innovations. And, let's hope the rest of the states catch up very quickly. Folks need legal help out here. Thanks for bringing that up, Deborah. Really appreciate it. At Courtroom 5, we believe the courts belong to the people, in particular to the people who use them. And we, the people, are coming to claim our courts. And so if you are in court without a lawyer, or you need to sue someone and can't find a lawyer to represent you, get yourself over to courtroom5.com and try it out today. We hope to provide some relief for you there. At this time, it's my great pleasure to welcome to the show Mathew Kerbis. Mathew is the founder of subscriptionattorney.com, an Illinois attorney. Mathew, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Well, let's start at the beginning. What got you involved in the legal profession? What drew you to the law?
I don't think I've told this part of the story before, but really a friend of mine in high school. He's not a lawyer now, but he forced me to join law club with him just because it was something to do after school. And he was president of law club, and he wanted to be a lawyer, and that was what he always wanted to do. And I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I loved philosophy, and I loved thinking deeply about things and trying to solve problems. And so when I went to college undecided, I decided to take a philosophy class. And I really would have loved to major in philosophy, but what are you going to do, open a philosophy store? This is before content creator was a job, right? Is that, philosophy lends itself well to that. But my instructor, a PhD student, said if you enjoy this philosophy logic class, then you can continue. You can major in philosophy, take more logic, sit for the LSAT, do well because you studied logic, and become a lawyer. And I was like, well, hey, that makes a lot of sense. And I was part of that law club thing back in high school, so let's give this a shot and see. And I'm a first-generation attorney, and so I didn't have other family members I was able to go to ask about it. I just sort of figured, hey, this could be a way to earn a living. That was before I knew about student loans for law school. But, that's the early origins.
That's fantastic. As student debt, we all have it these days. It can spur some innovation, can it? You've got to pay the bills at the end of the day. So yeah. Fantastic. Well, great. We were talking a bit ago about the huge access to justice crisis in the country. We've got this huge latent demand of people with legal problems who can't access justice. They can't certainly access lawyers, right? What's behind this problem from your perspective? Why do we have this big market failure?
Well, it really comes down to the legal education system, right? And to a certain extent, the American Bar Association and what they do in the section of legal education, which I used to be the young lawyer liaison on that body, and they're doing the best that they can. But the reality is they only know what they know. And what they know and what legal educators know is because most of them at this point, even at the lower tiered law schools, most of the professors are Ivy Leaguers, and I don't know, maybe not most, but a great chunk of them are. And so they know what they learned in law school, and they know maybe practicing big law. And the incentives for U.S. News, although that's been thrown into disarray, which I'm happy about, is things like that, and like wanting to attract just students in general to your law school, is look at where we've employed all these lawyers at these big law firms. Not even thinking about like what the opportunity cost is and the personal cost to that type of a life. And so that's what gets pushed and that's what gets taught. I never learned about the billable hour in law school. I learned it when I transitioned to a billable hour firm. But when I got started doing foreclosure defense work. I was keeping a roof over people's heads, and I knew nothing about anything when it came to the law. All I knew was we did everything we could in the rules of civil procedure to keep a roof over people's heads as long as possible. And what did they do? They paid us a flat amount every month as long as we were able to do that, which I later reflected back on as I was building my own law practice and thinking about how could I charge people in a reasonable way that they could afford to pay.
That's extraordinary. That is fantastic. So just for our audience, the U.S. News ranking lists the best law schools in order, right? And that's recently, as you say, been shaken up. And so law schools are, I guess, trying to attract their students a different way. They're having to think differently about that whole thing. I agree with you. I think that's fantastic news for legal education. The billable hour, tell us what that is, how that whole thing developed.
Yeah. So there was a great podcast episode on one of the Legal Talk Network podcasts. They have a bunch of them. I can't remember when it was. It was a couple of years ago, but they did like a deep examination of it. And it wasn't until like the late 60s, early 70s when there was an antitrust case that was filed against bar associations that used to do flat fees. They used to set what the flat fees could be for legal services, and that was found to be an antitrust violation. And so the law firms at the time looked into, well, what are some other ways we could charge for our services now that we're not stuck to these flat fees? And they looked at the billable hour as a way that they could make a lot of money. And it was sold to clients that it was also good for clients because they could actually like pick apart and see what is a lawyer actually doing. And there's a nugget of truth in that, absolutely. But what that has ballooned into has been I point to the billable hour as a huge source of the stress that lawyers face. If that's the only way you make money is when you're working, then you're stressed when you're not working, right? I mean, we know we have mental health problems. We know we have substance abuse problems in the profession, and LAP is a great, like Lawyers Assistance Program is great, but just like a lot of the access to justice services out there, it's a Band-Aid for a problem, not trying to prevent getting cut in the first place. And so the billable hour is like trying to eliminate it has been like my solution to that is like, let's solve it at the source. But really I'm working on something that's legal work and I'm tracking my time and then I bill my client in arrears for that work. So the client doesn't know how much money it's going to cost them for legal services and the lawyer doesn't know how much money they're going to make from a client case, but they're certainly incentivized to take a lot of time.
I mean, the incentives there are just terrible on both sides, it seems to me, because again, as you say, clients don't know how much they're going to pay. They can't, therefore, just from a straight sales perspective, they can't value, right, what they're buying here. You know, it's a terrible, terrible system. And so, yeah, go ahead.
Like, imagine you went to Starbucks or a coffee shop and you ordered a cappuccino. And they said, okay, so it might be $5, it might be $10. We charge $2, or whatever. They'll charge $2 every 2 minutes, $1 a minute, and we'll see what it is. We'll see how long it takes to make your drink, and then you're going to pay after you get your drink, whether you like it or not.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's especially terrible. I mean, that's bad enough at a Starbucks, but and you're looking at $300 an hour, which is the average billable hour for a lawyer, in the US, that gets ugly quick. Yeah. And I have to tell you, from our perspective, at Courtroom 5, we see tons of people who are refugees from that model. Our folks are handling really tough cases. They have no business, frankly, litigating on their own, right? And so, of course, they go to a lawyer. Where else are you going to go to get this problem handled? You put up a few $1,000 retainer, and then the bills start coming. And they come, and they come, and they come. And you look up, $10, $20, $50,000 later, right? You've got no more money. You're stuck in the middle of your case. The matter has not been resolved, and you go looking for Courtroom 5, right? And it's a terrible, terrible situation. So I just applaud you for trying to get rid of that model and encouraging other lawyers to do that. So let's talk now about how you get rid. How are you working to get rid of it? What is Subscription Attorney about?
Yeah, so I actually started to, like any lawyer does, their research, right? Like what we're trained to do, like any academic or anybody who's into that, not just lawyers. But I before I started like looking into the model, I was like, has anybody else done this? And I did find a few attorneys who had done this, and so I reached out to them and I did my research and I was talking to them and I was like, this would make a really good podcast. And so as I was thinking about the model, I actually came up with the podcast idea first. So I have a podcast called Law Subscribed where I continue to talk to lawyers about it and learn things because I'm just we're all sort of operating on our own, attorneys who are trying to do alternative fee arrangements in our own ways, especially the subscription model. And so I was learning from these other lawyers and I was teaching them things that they never thought of. And so it makes for a good podcast. But then I wanted to do it very differently because it really started in niche practice areas. But I was chair of the law student division in the ABA. And in that leadership, I learned not only all the issues with recent graduates and student loan debt and the stress and getting a job, but also access to justice. That's where I learned about the access to justice problem. Not in law school, in bar leadership and volunteering. And I just saw both of these problems. And I was like, how do we solve the access to justice problem? And how do we solve young lawyers who aren't doing what they want to do because they need to make as much money as they can to pay down their student loans? And I saw the subscription model as a way out because you can, if you adopt technology and scale like other businesses are incentivized to do, then you can actually serve more people and make more money potentially, not billing by the hour because you create productized legal services, you create efficiencies, automations, easily repeatable processes. And it just was like a light bulb went off. But there was no path of how to do it in the way that I wanted to do it. There were trademarks. There was even family law, which is like really hard, but like kudos to those in Colorado. It's like mostly Colorado lawyers who are pioneering in that space. And so I wanted to do like a general transactional practice. And so I just sort of made it up as I went along. And I've only changed like my prices 3 times for 3 items, but most of it has been the same. And what I've never changed and what I hope to never change is the $20 a month entry level access point, because like that's sometimes just getting legal advice over the phone or on a Zoom call. It just helps avoid a massive problem down the line. And so like that's been very appealing to people, that $20 a month entry fee.
It's extraordinary, and it really, from my perspective, is an effort at democratizing the law. When, rich people, I mean, every rich person has a law firm, right? I mean, it's just something you do with your wealth. You have a law firm on retainer, and you may not talk to your lawyer ever, right? But you've got somebody trusted, good, who knows your business, whose job it is to know your legal issues, right? And to help you with them. And you're talking about something that helps the individual or family interface with government, right? You need a patent or a copyright or some litigation or a demand letter or a will, right? A whole bunch of things that really are about interfacing your legal rights, right? Your government rights, if you will. And everybody ought to have that. Everybody ought to have that. But of course, I'm not Trump or other rich folks that just have lawyers out there. And most Americans are in that same situation. And so it's folks like you, I think, and this model that enables folks to access the legal services that we all deserve.
And,
Tell me.
And most lawyers couldn't afford to have a
Exactly.
lawyer on retainer. So
That's
like
right.
that's a messed up system. And the first time I learned about that was in the ABA, where a partner at a big law firm said I couldn't afford my own billable rate. And I'm thinking, what the heck? This
Yeah.
whole system is broken.
It is.
Right? So
It is.
You just reminded me of that. Sorry, go ahead. What was your question?
No, you're absolutely right. And so you've got, again, a $20 entry point. Things can get more expensive for sure, like anything else. But a $20 entry point to just have access to your own attorney, I think is just extraordinary. Tell me how it works then. If I'm, deciding, okay, I want to be like a rich person and I want to have an attorney of my own, and I find you, and I'm in Illinois. Your services, I think, are only available there. Where how does it work? I reach out to you, and what happens?
Yeah, I mean, fingers crossed for allowance of multi-jurisdictional transactional practice. Let's hope that happens. And I get reached out to by people all across the U.S. because they're searching for like super cheap, ultra affordable lawyer, and I come up in the search terms. So that I wish I could help them, and I have to refer. And sometimes it's like refer to their local county bar association and ask for attorneys. But that's not going to lead to any results. But I do the best I can. But with $20 a month, what do they get? They get access. But they also get legal advice, because sometimes that one piece of access they get is access to schedule 15-minute calls with me. Now, at the entry level, that's only 3 hours towards the end of my day every weekday. But I've yet to hit capacity at that, so I could still continue to sign up $20 a month clients as long as I have that capacity, right? Because we have legal ethics to comply with. So I have to, if I hit capacity, I either have to hire or I have to turn off that faucet, right?
Yep.
But I still have room for people to sign up at that level. But also access to just message me your question in the client portal, right? And hopefully I can get back to you, just quickly that way. They get access to below market flat fee services. So to the extent that I can be below market, I am, but sometimes there's like not a market. Like when I got started, one of the price changes I made, I started at $99 a page for contract negotiations, but nobody was buying it. So I was like, what's the lowest I could charge where I still feel like I'm providing value but getting paid in exchange? And I thought I could cut it in half. So it's $50 a page. And all of a sudden, people started hiring me to review and analyze and draft contracts at $50 a page. And that also helps me sell the higher packages, because if somebody is using me a lot, well, suddenly it doesn't make sense to pay $50 a page even though they're only paying $20 a month. Now it makes sense to start subscribing at higher levels depending on what their needs are. Like everyday people, at most, I don't see them going more than the $100 a month subscription to get access to my whole calendar. to book 15-minute calls with me. That's like what that gets. It also gets some additional flat fee services that don't really make sense at the $20 a month financially for me, like the ongoing litigation, like limited scope consulting that we spoke about before, the call. And so like that I need to put at that $100 a month just because I'll be doing a lot of work for people at that level. But for business owners, for freelancers, I mean, what were the numbers recently? I think like it was one of these companies that helps freelancers. They put out there like 40% of Americans have a side hustle, which is either a great thing or a bad thing. Like full-time jobs aren't enough. That every 40% of people need a side hustle. But a lot of people are entrepreneurs that way, and it'd be important for them to get some legal advice. And if they start to get more contracts, and they're my client, then $300 a month makes sense because they get 3 contracts with that, and now I'm not charging them $50 a page. But most of my clients, I would say, sign up at the $20 a month and use the $50 a page or my simple estate plan, which is just like, in 2 days, let's get you that estate plan so you're protected kind of a thing. So those seem to be my most popular items that people buy. And I'm a solopreneur, virtual law firm. My overhead is super low, so I could afford to charge those prices and make a decent living. I'm not going to be the richest lawyer charging these prices, but I could sustain a lifestyle, for my family, and my spouse works. And so, like we're doing fine. And people are hiring me at that level. So I'm perfectly happy with it.
I love it. And don't sell yourself short. I mean, we both understand the latent demand for services. And again, it's not all litigation. Folks need wills, as we talked about. They need contracts reviewed, et cetera, et cetera. Look, if you tap into this, one of the benefits of being sort of a first mover in the space is you blink your eye and all of a sudden you've got 10 people doing this and you're at the beach supervising them, right?
I love helping people though. Like I love working with the clients, and I've automated so much that like I am like the time I'm spending is like mostly like talking to clients. And so or negotiating disputes with other attorneys. So like I do like that part. And while I have no plans to hire, you're right. You never know. You got to keep an open mind. And but I can't see myself ever fully just going on a beach.
Sure. Grow. One of the things you mentioned is that you're a virtual law firm. And there has been this old rule that as a law firm, you have to have a physical presence. You have to have a door that people can walk through and talk to you. But you're doing it completely virtual. This is a new innovation, thankfully, in the field. And you meet your clients primarily on Zoom or, text messaging and that sort of thing. Have you seen that change the interaction with clients?
Yeah. And like I could not have had this law firm before the pandemic. The pandemic was bad for a lot of people. And so like I'd hate to like look at it too fondly, but like if it wasn't for the pandemic, client expectations wouldn't have changed and shifted. And also like, a lot of court could now be attended virtually. And the only reason why I'm not offering that service yet is because it's not like a guaranteed I don't have to leave my desk if I'm litigating on somebody's behalf. If that changes in Illinois, like I might start offering services to litigate again. But client expectations change. And when they change and when they all have Zoom or Google Meet or whatever, FaceTime on their phone, right. Now they expect you to be able to meet with them virtually.
That's right.
Why do they? And if you can meet with them virtually, you don't need to have a really expensive office in a high-rise downtown with mahogany furniture, right? So all these expenses, and so you don't need to charge $300 an hour because you don't need the expensive office, you don't need the expensive furniture, you don't need to put on that appearance of, ooh, look at me, I'm a fancy lawyer. So and clients who want a fancy lawyer, they could go pay $300 an hour or more for a fancy lawyer. That's not a good fit for me, right?
Yeah.
So the clients that hire me love it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I can well imagine. And so you do provide very, very limited litigation consulting services. But of course, as we discussed, the legal needs that most of us have are not focused on litigation. But litigation does come up oftentimes, or at least opportunities to litigate or to be sued. How do you help people avoid that?
Yeah, so it's it's complicated, right? Because at the end of the day, it's either, two parties in dispute or more have to reach an agreement, and if two party and you can't control other people, but what you especially can't control a jury of random people. And so, a lot of things have to be a jury trial. Sometimes you get a bench trial, but like sometimes just explaining that. And when the lawyer, I'm not incentivized to let the dispute go further because I'm going to make more money if like we end up in court. Like that's just a huge part of it, right? Like maybe I'll never do litigation because it provides the right incentive for me to help clients like avoid going to court in the first place. But hopefully they come to me before there's been a lawsuit that's been filed. Sometimes I have gotten clients who've come to me that said, there's this complaint I got, whatever. Well, I could still try to enter a settlement agreement and negotiate a settlement and release and get the case dismissed without even having to do the limited scope representation, right? So I can do that. But it's much easier if clients think of me as like, like the reason you go to a doctor once a year, it's not because you're sick. It's because you want to make sure you're not sick. So if like $20 a month is also accessible, so hopefully they're contacting me, they're talking to me, hey, this thing happened at work, or my employer is making me sign this document, or I got in a car accident. I have a client who's like, I got in a car accident. It's like, okay, well, let me talk you through everything right now. And let's figure this out. So hopefully you don't have to sue the other driver. We can work something out with the insurance company, assuming there's insurance. Although I have one client where it's just property damage. I have another where it's not, but there's the accident-causing driver didn't have insurance. So it's complicated. So now we're looking at an uninsured motorist claim, which I used to be on the insurance side of that. So, a lot of it is just trying to reach a result as quickly as possible. And look, in some situations, people need to go to court. They need to. You can't convince people to agree to settle, and even if you make them sign that agreement, they might not pay or do the thing they're supposed to do. So, courts have a really important purpose. They're never going away, but I feel like we can significantly reduce the burden on the courts by helping clients reach resolutions with parties they're in dispute with before they have to file anything.
That's fantastic. That is extraordinary. Mathew, I love what you're doing. Where can people find you online?
I'm everywhere, but, subscriptionattorney.com is the law firm. Lawsubscribe.com is the podcast. If there's any other innovators in the legal space that maybe want to give that a listen, that would be useful for you. Mathew Kerbis on LinkedIn. I'm most active on LinkedIn. Also, you could search The Subscription Attorney, and I should pop up in a lot of places too.
That's extraordinary. Thank you so much for joining us, for sharing this wealth of knowledge. I hope you blow up. I hope, everybody in Illinois finds their way to you when they need help. I think it's a fantastic model. Wish you the best of luck and success there.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for having me.
You bet. That is just extraordinary. I'm excited. I've never wanted to go to law school before in my life. And now I have to think about it. There's new stuff, right? it's great. That's a really fantastic model. All right, Deborah, I know I'm always taking up more of your time than I should, but why don't you go ahead and take us home today? What do we have?
Yeah, last week we had a case review. Today we'll do a quiz. Something simple here. Question: a blank is a court order that commands a party in a lawsuit to appear in court. And that's, I hope, very simple for everybody. And the answer is a summons is a court order that commands a party in a lawsuit to appear in court. And
that's
that
great.
is a quiz for today.
That's a trick question, by the way.
What do you mean?
It is. It's a trick question because it could have been subpoena if you hadn't asked party. If you didn't have party in the statement, it could have been a subpoena. But anyway, you got away with it this time. It's a trick. Very good. Very good. Very good to know those distinctions. All right. Fantastic.
Okay.
Well, that's all we have for you today. I want to thank Mathew Kerbis and subscriptionattorney.com for joining us again today. And thank you all for joining us. We will see you next time.
Are you feeling beleaguered, angry, or afraid, as if things are spinning out of control and you're powerless to stop them? It's easy to just let things slide and hope they don't get worse. But they often do get worse. The thing is, you're not powerless. Our courts belong to us, and their purpose is to give power to the powerless. Don't let your grievances pile up without redressing them. You can handle this in court, or if someone takes you to court, you can take them to school.